Hey, Sorority Chat peeps. I'm Liz, and I am back this week with a solo episode of the podcast. I wanted to talk to you about planning and executing a sorority facility update. I have a lot of notes in front of me because there is much to say about this topic. So I suggest grab a notebook and a pen and jot down what helps you as you approach your facility projects. So, step one in this process is to brainstorm and to set a vision for your project. You have to know where you're going in order to be able to get there. And that's with every goal, and it certainly is true for projects like this too. So start off by dreaming big. You can gather chapter members for a brainstorming session, alumni. It depends on how you're set up. If you have a locally run House Core board, or if you're feeding information about your needs and wants up to the NHC, FMC level. But make a list of what are your must-haves. What's the vibe that you're going for? Can you create like a vision board or a Pinterest board, or even more simple than that, just gather photos that are good examples of what inspires you, what you might like to see in your facility. And then get really specific with those photos. So if you're putting them on a Pinterest board, don't just pin a photo and leave it. Put in the notes what it is about that photo that you love. So that's something that my team always asks when we have chapters submit Pinterest boards is, okay, in this picture, we see a living room. There's a lot of furniture, there's a lot of decor, curtains, rugs, all the things. What is it that appeals to you here? Is it the overall color scheme? Is it, oh man, I love that sofa style. I'd love to see that in here. Or wow, that piece of art just screams our organization. We would love to have that. Get specific with what it is that you're liking in these inspiration photos, and that will help you and whoever becomes the design team execute that vision for you. And sometimes too, you make a vision board and it's not till months later that anything actually happens with that board. And the likelihood you might have forgotten what it was you liked about the picture is pretty high. So those notes help you stay clear on what it was that was inspiring you at the time that you made the board. Let's see. Be sure to get input from all the stakeholders, decision makers on this. You don't want it to be death by committee, but you certainly need to get buy-in from chapter members and from alumni. The house can't look the same as it's always looked because that's not progressing, that's not meeting the needs of the current chapter members. But we also can't go out on every whim for every design trend and be changing the house every year. So we have to kind of gather that feedback and then run it through a filter of what's meeting our needs, what is going to hold up well, what is going to look classic and reflect our chapter culture in this facility. A lot of times what my team recommends is if you are a House Core board or there's some kind of design committee, get a representative of one student per class so that you can hear their feedback. Some of these students, their time in the sorority is almost over. Some of them are newly coming in. And so I think taking into account all of their feedback is really valuable. And then what I always say is it lets them feel heard and acknowledged. And we can work with that, right? Some of the ideas they bring to the table may not be something that you actually want to execute, but if they're heard, you can speak back to that and say, I know that you really wanted to do a sectional in this room. That doesn't work in this space because of X. But over here, we did incorporate a sectional, and here's why it works better here and why it meets that need that you brought up. So those comments that they bring to the table can inform design decisions, even if it's not in the exact way that the student envisioned them when they shared the comment. Students, if you're listening and you're creating this vision board, hand it off to your House Core board and let them run with it. Like I said, the more information that you can provide, the better. Then after you have the vision, we have to go through something a little bit uncomfortable, and you have to talk about money. Some people are more comfortable with this than others, but determining the budget is crucial because You have to know how much money that you have available to spend. You have to be getting quotes on things to know what things cost, and then you can prioritize what you're going to do if there's any kind of budgetary constraints. So you'll take a look at your chapter funds. If you need to raise any money, you'll have to just take into consideration all of the possible buckets of funding that you can get to cover the expenses of your project. And the scale of your project and the scope of what's involved will obviously affect the final numbers and the amount of money that you need to have on hand for the project. Fundraising can be really fun and engaging. It takes time. You have to reach out to a lot of alumni. There's great companies that help with this. And some chapters just are great about garnering donations and getting funds brought in from alumni to cover expenses. Sometimes I have been pulled into the process and asked to create some boards with price tags on them so that the House Core board could share that with parents clubs or alums and say, hey, do you want to sponsor this room for this amount of money? Do you want to buy this grouping of chairs for this amount of money? Because sometimes having a tactile product makes someone more willing to turn over their money because they can see exactly what that dollar is going to cover. So keep that in mind. It can be really fun and a different way to engage people. Excuse me. So getting into the nitty gritty, now we know what our project's going to look like. We've dreamed big. We're getting our prices. It's all coming down to like reality now. So let's talk about creating a detailed plan and timeline. So what are the priorities? What tasks have to be completed first? You may want to assign roles and responsibilities to ensure that everyone involved in the process knows what they need to do. Now, if you have a design team like a contractor, architect, designer, construction consultant, those folks, they're going to know what they need to do. Y'all will be on the same page. If this is going to be volunteer led, because maybe it's a smaller scale, one room update, or you're painting and replacing flooring, and so you don't have to have a lot of folks involved, that's where it's going to be key to assign roles to people so they know exactly what they're responsible for. There's no questions, and then everything that needs to get done will get done. Schedule regular check-ins to stay on track and adjust as needed. As I mentioned, if you have like a formal construction team, design team involved, there's usually OAC calls, owner architect contractor calls on a weekly or semi-monthly basis so that everybody is checking in and you're seeing how the timeline's progressing, what benchmarks are being met, what may not get done, and so on. And then you as the client can stay informed that way. So let's talk about hiring professionals versus DIY projects because there's a time and a place for all of it. For larger renovations, you're going to want to hire professionals. You're going to need your contractors, your designers, subcontractors, all of those types of things. And when I say subcontractors, that could be like a flooring installer, electrician, so on. Depending on how your project is laying out, it may be that your contractor hires those subs and handles all of that, or it may be that you're only changing out maybe 2 light fixtures. And so you as a house core board are hiring the electrician, or you're going to replace the flooring on the first floor. Doesn't require a contractor. So you as a house core board are going to hire the flooring labor. So just think about that. You want to bring in the needed specialists and professionals because they're there to help make this process go better for you. You don't want to be the ones in there tearing up the floor and then relaying tile. You want someone professional to do it where it's warranted, it looks good. They've got this under control for you. For smaller updates, DIY projects can be possible. So they also help like make it a cost-effective option. So you could do like a painting party. So maybe you need some new artwork and you could create some fun like abstract canvases, or maybe there is a piece of furniture in the foyer that you love it. It's really sturdy. It has good bones, but it needs new life. And so maybe you have like a pizza and painting party where you get some folks together and you all tackle that. Or if there's some small pieces that you're adding to the house, then you maybe have an assembly party. So I'm trying to think of what a good example of that might be. Maybe you're putting in, new soap dispensers and towel dispensers like on the countertop in the bathrooms. And so you have a lot of sinks. And so you get some sisters together, some alums, and everybody unboxes and fills the soap dispensers, fills the towel dispensers, and places them. Don't feel like one or two people have to hold all of the responsibility, because that gets very tiring and that's how you burn out your volunteers. So think of creative ways that you can get groups involved to come and have some buy-in on the updates that you're making with the house. I will say this, a word of caution with DIY projects. You have to be discerning on when it's something that you can handle on your own versus something to hire out, kind of like that example I used with flooring. You just want to make sure that anything you DIY is not something that requires expertise and experience, because if you DIY that, you're likely to make mistakes, which in the end will cost you more money than just hiring the professional outright in the first place. So discernment is key there. Okay, so moving on in this process. Execution and overseeing the project. As work begins, you're going to want to monitor things closely. Like I said, regularly checking in with contractors and or volunteers to ensure everything is going to your plan will be very helpful. So I will warn you, you need to be prepared for hiccups. What hiccups may vary based on your project and vary based on your timeline. But there are always hiccups along the way. It could be that a product is not going to make it in by the deadline. So you have to be ready to pivot or wait on that or figure out what to do. It could be that something was quoted at a certain price, and when they actually got in there and started tearing things out, oh, there's some unexpected surprises and it's going to cost a little bit more. So just be prepared for those kinds of things. It's just like the home renovation shows that you see. There's always something that pops up. I don't say that to be negative. I say that to be realistic. I do this every day, and there is never a project that something small or large surprises don't come up on. So if you're prepared for that, that will help get you in the right mindset to stay flexible, keep your end goal in mind, and figure out how to work through the challenges that arise. So once the heavy lifting is done and all the updates are over, it's time for the fun part, the decorating and adding those finishing touches. So think about accent pieces, any sort of chapter historical memorabilia that needs to be involved, and any kind of other personal touches that you want to use to make the house feel like home. It's always fun too if you want to plan a big reveal party to celebrate the updates and the hard work. Sometimes this comes in the form of ribbon cutting if it's a new facility or a major renovation, and you can work with your national headquarters on scheduling that. And sometimes it's just, hey, here we are. We're excited. Thanks for donating the money for this room. Come and check it out. Or you can send them a video of how the women use the room and saying thank you for the space. There's all kinds of fun ways that you can celebrate this win. And I definitely encourage you to consider finishing the project a win and to take a moment to celebrate it. So that's it for today's episode. I hope that this helps you for planning and executing your amazing facility update, whatever that may be. I know we talked in kind of big general ideas, but I think you can walk away and take my advice and figure out how to apply that to your actual project and what you may be planning. And let me say that it is never too early to start planning a project, because you do have to gather so much information on the front end. And anytime a project is rushed and it's hurried and you're scrambling, it doesn't turn out how you want it to. And so sometimes it's okay to just stop, take a breath, take a step back and say, okay, this might not get done by recruitment, but when can it get done? What does that look like? And if we need to talk about this project at recruitment, maybe we create some design boards or show some renderings and say, hey, this is what's in the works. It's not ready yet, but it's coming. And we are excited about it, and don't rush the end result. But overall, it is all about teamwork, creativity, having fun, and creating spaces that support these collegiate members' years on campus and within your organization. So that is the end goal. And if you keep that in mind, you will have a successful project. I will catch you next week.